Hi, welcome to No Effort Reviews, where I review a movie as if I were talking to a friend. Fuck the movie. The actual horror comes from applying for a job. As you know, I am employed. I have a job. I still keep my fingers in the job market coochie, and honestly, it is just dry. The market is shit. Anyway, let me tell you about something a little less horrifying. A horror movie in the big 2026 that isn't a trash. This past weekend, or should I say this past Sunday, I sat down at my desk. At my desk. I sat down at my desk. I sipped on a berry blend. What the fuck is happening to me? I sat down at my desk and sipped on a berry blaze cooler and indulged myself in the mindless fun of a movie called Thrash. Initially, I paid very little attention to the movie. This just seemed like a poor remake of Crawl, the horror movie from 2019 about a Category 5 hurricane hitting a small town, and rain is not the only thing dropping from the clouds. Say hello to the American alligator, right? I liked Crawl. It was a good movie. In the same breath, I did not expect Thrash to be any good. 20 minutes into the movie, we are introduced to a whole host of characters. The three most noteworthy are Whitney Peak. She plays the socially isolated Dakota. Phoebe Dynavo, I believe, who plays a heavily pregnant Lisa. And the third is actually a foster group of three. I'm just going to call them the orphans for the rest of this video. For consistency purposes, of course. With that amazing character summary in mind, let us talk about the very basic plot. Big hurricane, town flooded, sharks eat. Great summary out of the way. What makes the movie actually enjoyable and beyond just a copy of Crawl or the classic bullshit movie Sharknado? I love that shit. The characters, the characters, the characters. Earlier, I mentioned the three most noteworthy characters in the movie. Of the three, Dakota has a backstory that I do not care for. In all honesty, you would have to make the character a lot more sad for me to give a fuck. Dakota was in between, happy and sad, like somewhere here. It just wasn't enough for me. With that being said, she is the MVP of the movie. Incredibly smart moves and takes the right actions when the need arises. Very early on in the movie, Dakota saves Lisa, and realistically, I would not. I would say, bitch, you're dead. Two for one kill, right? The shark murks Lisa and her unborn kid. If I saw people get death devoured in anything in a body of water, I won't have a shower again. And despite that, Dakota puts herself at risk and saves Lisa. A morally blue character, I would have to award her Best Character of the movie. Next, let's talk about heavily pregnant Lisa. I guess just an emotional heart tug of the movie, and the role is played well. And to summarize his character, bad planning, stuck in a town, pregnant, sharks. However, a little spoilers for like a minute. I'm gonna give you some spoilers. As we all know, she gives birth in the movie, and we all know what happens soon after that. It was something I could not predict, and in all honesty, I really enjoy those few scenes. I did not expect the story to go that way, and that 1 to 2 minutes when this mysterious event occurs, the movie gets a lot more fun. That's the key word. Fun, not necessarily scary, but just fun. I like her character. She has no character arc whatsoever, but you don't need a character arc when you're pregnant. I just guess that's the rules of movies. It's just a fact. Finally, the orphan trio. This was actually a brilliant idea by the writers. Dakota is introduced first, and I have no sympathy for her. She could die the worst death, and I would not care. She is introduced as a character to whom the audience will be bound to. However, there must have been at least one writer who had the foresight to know that her character as an emotional anchor sucks ass. Bring in the beatdown, only bread eating trio of orphans who are being fostered by the literal version of human shit. The orphan trio. It sounds like a legendary Pokemon trio. All three of those characters are great. Personally, if there was a little more direct, suggestive behavior that the foster parents had inflicted upon these kids, I think they would have made a much better emotional anchor. Not a lot, like a tiny amount. I think it would have made a great payoff to the sharks biting an ass cheek much later in the movie. Also, it is wild how blood works in this movie. Apparently, blood loss during a typhoon and shock is just not a thing in this cinematic, incredible universe. Back to the orphans. They are prepared, smart, brave, tactical, and importantly, they share a strong sibling bond. I don't think at any point in the movie they are directly said to be siblings, but I'm going to assume that yes, they are siblings, not just three kids in a same foster home. I don't want to get into major spoilers, but the movie is worth the watch, especially when you realize how good the characters are in the movie about sharks eating people. So if you have time, definitely give it a look. Finally, the sharks. In the movie, we get limited shark screen time. That is not the worst thing. Think of Jaws. We did not need the shark presence to build tension. The tension in this movie comes from the dynamics of the characters, and for the most part, it works well as an entry level horror movie. Something that's just for shits and giggles, pure fun, not too scary unless, again, it's your foray into horror or if you're on the younger side. It is a good movie, especially in the context of majority of horror movies past 2019 being utter shit. As a horror connoisseur, but also someone who has watched some of the worst horror movies ever made, I will have to give this movie a pass. This video isn't very long. This video is not very long, but I already do not remember what I have said. So yeah, go ahead, get baked, watch the movie. I will have to give it 5 Bruces out of 10, and I will see you guys tomorrow.